Everyone, and thank you once again for taking time out of your busy days to come and join us for the discussion of this important issue. As Mariah said, my name is Carcasson. I'm Associate Professor of Communication at Colorado State University and also the Director of the CSU Center for Public Deliberation. I started the center about 5 years ago just to serve as an impartial resource for Northern Colorado to help us have better conversations about tough issues and kind of go through things. Part of what I do with the center is I train undergraduates to be facilitators, and so we can do small group discussions for a lot of our meetings, things like that. And then we also help with other events like this. So I worked with Pathways Past Poverty and the Pathways Past Poverty Policy Committee that came up with the questions to design this event and kind of run it today. One of the reasons I started, I'm a communication professor focused on how we talk about politics and how we solve problems. And to kind of, we'll get to them real quick, but just to throw out a few things, one of the reasons I do is because the quality of our political communication really impacts how well we can solve these problems. And some of our adversarial political system works well in lots of ways, but one of the problems is it really influences or it makes it easier just to kind of have one-way communication. And we don't talk to each other enough. And too much of our communication is kind of preaching to our own choirs, whether that's through direct mail or 30-second sound bites and things like that. So events like today, to get people in front of each other and kind of talk through those ideas, help us kind of understand what common ground we may have and clarify those differences rather than a lot of political communication that sometimes exaggerates those differences and creates polarization where it might not actually be there. So with this issue with poverty, and one of the things that we learned last week when we ran this in Loveland with the candidates down there and the state senators, is there's a lot of common ground here. Regardless of political party, moving people from moving people from poverty to self-sufficiency is a common good. From having them relying on social services to now being taxpayer, again, regardless of our ideology, it's important. So we start this in some ways with strong common ground. Clearly today we'll see differences in the way we deal with this issue, but hopefully this event helps us clarify those differences and kind of understand that, while also realizing and building on that common ground across perspectives. Pathways Past Poverty kind of fits in this perspective as well, which is why we've been working with them for so long. It's a broad community mobilization. It realizes that to deal with poverty issues, we need all perspectives involved. It needs to be a public and a private and nonprofits kind of working together. And certainly there's a role for government in a lot of these issues, but there's also roles for many things outside the government that we can figure out how to work well. So office holders or potential office holders play many roles with this. Certainly helping us pass public policy to do this, but they also act as community leaders and conveners to help the broader community address this issue, which is once again why this issue is so important to bring together. So briefly in terms of the process, the Pathways Past Poverty Policy Committee came up with the questions. We went through a process, lots of questions we wanted to ask, but it's one of those things that, they only have 6 people, so 3 minutes per person, time goes pretty quickly. So we finally narrowed it down to 6 questions that we'll be asking. We provided these questions to the candidates probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. Part of the function of this is hopefully they had to study for today. They had to look at some of these issues, and we provided them some information. You have the questions in front of you because the questions are really long and convoluted, because this is a difficult issue, right? So the questions themselves try to provide some context and provide some information, and we wanted them to be ready to be able to give serious answers to these. Connected to the notion of what I try to do with the center, being an impartial resource and kind of spark better conversations and get past some of the polarization, our event today will have some ground rules for the candidates that we again gave them to them 3 weeks ago, and they showed up. So tactically, they've already somewhat agreed to it, but we'll get them to specifically agree. One is to follow the time constraints. Again, we have 3 minutes, and one of my students will be helping time them. Focus on the question that's asked. Right, so you got 3 minutes. We wanted to focus on that question and get the different perspectives on that issue. Focus on sharing your ideas, not attacking others. You can certainly respond to each other, or if you need to clarify differences between your perspectives, that's okay. But do that in a productive way that's clear, and it's not exaggerating or providing a false caricature of your opponent's position, which is basically the last rule. You may certainly respond to others during your time, but please do so constructively in the spirit of the forum. The way we'll be doing it in terms of the order of the question, we have 6 questions and 6 candidates. So we'll start with John Cafalis with the first question. He'll answer that one first, and we'll head that way. And then the second question will be answered by Bob Moraine and kind of going this way. So we'll switch going right to left and left to right between each question, so the candidates each get to speak first on that issue before their opponent 3 times and second 3 times. But I'll do that so you don't have to worry about that. It sounds a lot more complicated than it is. Yeah. So with that, we'll go ahead and begin. Again, you got the questions